Hey students, in this video I'm just going to go over two problems, one on adding and one on subtracting, just so you can again see how to do it. But as much as I wish to make a video that goes over all these 8 problems, I don't want to waste your time. I want you to instead try, and you can use Photomath to double check your answers, but I don't want you to use Photomath to just get an answer. So if you don't understand what to do, please come to tutoring and I'll help you. All right, so when we subtract or add, the first thing we want to do is notate that we need the common denominator. And then in order to create the common denominator, we first need to factor the denominators. We want to factor them so we can see how they can become the same denominator. I can't even write and talk at the same time. My apologies. All right, so we are going to factor the denominators. This 5x is 5 times x. So these are your two factors for that. And then 6x is 6 times x. So we're going to have these two factors separate. And if you compare them side by side, you notice that they have the x in common, but they don't have the 5 in common or the 6 in common. So therefore, we want to multiply on this fraction on the left side times 6. That way we can also have the 6 as a factor. And then on this fraction, we want to multiply times 5. So we can also have the 5 as a fraction. But if you do it to the denominator, you also got to do it to the numerator. And I'm just going to color coordinate so you can see how they are now like terms. They're common denominators because they have the same amounts of factors. Both of the fractions have the same factors. So let's rewrite these fractions, and we have 6 times 12, which is 72. And then for the denominator, we're going to have 6 times 5, which is 30. 30 times x is 30x. Then we have minus, and then 7 times 5, that's 35. And then as the denominator, 6 times x, 6x times 5 is 30x. So that's how it ends up being a common denominator. And again, the process to do this is factor and then multiply times the factor that you don't have on each fraction. Okay, so next we are going to look only at the numerator, and we're going to simplify. We're going to combine these two the way they are being said to do. So 72 minus 35. So now we have this one fraction. And then in this case, you're just subtracting 72 minus 35, which happens to be 37. And then this is it as an answer for this problem. There's nothing else you can do. But if you do it, look at number 7 and 8, there are more x's in this, so you might end up needing to make more steps. I'm going to jump to to problem number 5, just so we can see what that would look like. For this, again, you're going to look only at the denominator and factor that first. X minus 5 is not going to be able to be factored more because you have a coefficient of 1, so you can't divide by anything other than 1. So this one's done. You have x minus 5 right here. And then on this one, x squared minus 25, you need to recognize that when it's something squared, it could be difference of squares. So something squared minus something squared. This 25 is 5 times 5, so it's 5 squared. So you do have two binomials for that one that turn into x plus 5 and x minus 5 because that's difference of squares. Okay, so now I'm going to copy down the numerator, the minus, and then the other numerator. So now we have the denominators broken into factors. We need to compare. So x minus 5 is here and here, so they have that in common. But then x plus 5 is only on this fraction. So we need to include it also on this fraction. And if you put it on the denominator, you also have to put it on the numerator. So now we're going to multiply. But before we do that, let me just color coordinate so you can see how we have the same denominators. All right, so on the numerator, we're going to have x plus 5 times x minus 1. You do have to multiply those before you subtract to this. So we do maybe the box method or the loops, the FOIL method, whatever works for you better. I'm going to do the box just because most of you are asking me to do that. So x times x is x squared. 5 times x is 5x. X times negative 1 is negative x. And then negative 1 times 5 is negative 5. These two are like terms. So your numerator, when you multiply these two, is going to be x squared. And then 5 minus 1 is 4x. And then minus 5 over x plus 5, x minus 5, minus x plus 3. X plus 3 cannot be factored, so you just write it down. All right, so now that you have the common denominators and the new version of the numerators, you're going to only focus on the numerators and combine them. So keep in mind that this is saying to subtract these two terms from what you have. So one thing you can do also is maybe write down that you are subtracting the binomial. So you need to distribute that negative in. So we're going to have x squared plus 4x minus 5, and then minus x and minus 3. And then the binomials of x plus 5, x minus 5 is your denominator. Okay, so next we want to simplify, so combine like terms. We have 4x minus x, and then we have negative 5 minus 3. So we're going to have x squared plus 3x minus 8. Okay, and then we have x plus 5, x minus 5. All right, so then now we look at the numerator and see if this trinomial can be simplified. So if we think about that, we want to factor it, and then a times c and b. 1 times negative 8 is negative 8, and then b is positive 3. What numbers do you multiply to get 8? So you only have the options of 1 times 8, 2 times 4, and that's it. So do any of these give you a 3 if you were to add or subtract them? 8 and 1 doesn't. 8 plus 1 is 9, and then difference is 7. 4 plus 2 is 6, and then the difference is 2. So none of these do. When nothing mathematically makes sense to this little x, and that means that this cannot be factored, this trinomial that we have on top. So this is your answer. If you have the answer in standard form, you will just have to multiply these binomials like we did right here for the trinomial as an answer. All right, I know it's a lot of work for one problem, but just with practice, you can understand the shortcuts and it'll get easier.